everybody. Welcome to Rumors versus Facts, the what was a recruiting show that has now morphed into just a general Georgia football show, mainly because Georgia recruiting, this particular recruiting class is 31 deep. It's not like there's 15, 20 guys we can talk about. So Jed and I have kind of moved on to some of the team stuff. And, you know, Jed's not just a recruiting writer. He's also a fantastic beat writer. He did a great story on Nate Frazier. You need to go back and check out 3,500 words, a giant story on Nate Frazier. So Jed is an absolute expert when it comes to Georgia football, and we're going to pick his brain right now. Jed, I left Coach Donna's house after doing the watch along, drove back over here to my house, hopped in the office, and I was in a good mood. I'm like, hell, that was a great Georgia game. 45 points, you know, you gave up a garbage touchdown at the end. Few concerning injuries, but Georgia ran the ball. They stopped the run. This is great. Then I started reading the dog vent, and I got depressed. Georgia's never going to win another game again. Georgia can't run the ball in the middle. Gunnar Stockton can't throw it past 7 feet, and we don't know how to rotate wide receivers, whatever it is. But I think the truth lies somewhere in the middle. And if I've learned anything from covering Kirby Smart and listening to Coach Donnan and going back to – you know, the coaches at Georgia the last 32 years I've covered, they'll always say, you know, you're not as good as you think you are. You're not as bad as you think you are. And so I want to go to a second opinion, and let's go to you, Jed May, and let's kind of get your overall thoughts, and then we'll hit some very specific points.
Yeah, I mean, overall, like you said, I think there's reason to be encouraged because I think a lot of no matter what stats you look at from this game, you can – you know, cash it by saying, oh, well, it was playing Marshall. And that's true. Marshall had a ton of guys leave or whatever. However, Georgia didn't exactly light the world on fire against UMass last November either. So, you know, with that being said, you kind of look at it and say, okay, you know, the defense gave up 75 yards through 3 quarters. That was mainly the starters. That's great. The offense came out and blew down the field on the first couple drives, scored a couple touchdowns. That was good. Gunnar Stockton used his legs, which I think – eventually, as teams have to respect that more and more, that's going to make the run game even better than it already is. Dwight Phillips, who we got him today, wrote a story about. He looked great, which was not necessarily surprising that he looked great, but he looks like a complete running back. You know, he was like a gadget guy last year. Came in, he had a track pedigree, and he blows through the hole on that first touchdown run on a toss sweep, looking like, you know, Todd Gurley from 10 years ago. So. Yeah, there's good. I mean, I had it on. It was on ESPNU or SEC Network or something today, and I had it on in the background. And those first 2 drives, Georgia got stuffed trying to run the ball on like 3rd and 1 and 3rd and 2 twice, which isn't good, obviously. And that was early in the game with the first team offensive line in. So that's not good. You would like to see more sacks, I guess, but Marshall's also get the ball out fast. So I don't know. I think this is one where if you want to get really picky, you know, there's stuff you can find, but overall, with a new quarterback, a lot of new. You know, how many times has Kirby Smart said this is a young team for a debut against a team that's, you know, it's still a team from the American, which is probably the best of the Group of 5 conferences. I think it's a pretty strong start.
Yeah, when I was thinking about one of the first things we saw was the sacks, and when I was thinking about it, I'm like, how many dropbacks did you see? I started looking into some of the data. There were only about 5 of those. So there were only 55 offensive plays, only 5 of which were drop back passes. And then you got to decide, are you sending everybody or are you covering? I mean, if it's an obvious passing down, you know, they've got 4 or 5 options going out for passes. You got to cover everybody. Yeah, you want to get to them, but at the same time, it's not like this was an air raid offense. And they know you've got your Jaguar package in. They know you're coming after them. So they're catching and throwing. They're getting rid of the ball quickly. And the same, and again, not saying there were no chances. Yeah, you should have got sacks. They did have 6 tackles for loss, which I thought was big. And there were no turnovers, which I'm like, man, come on, you're playing Marshall. And I'm not trying to take a shot against Marshall, but at some point, strip a ball, you know.
And only a couple penalties too. I think that's one of the things that you can see when you're playing an inferior team is how clean is the game. Like you said, no turnovers, really no like plays that were close to turnovers that I can think of. You know, Gunnar had a couple passes tipped, I guess, that could have been intercepted. Those were the only ones, and then only I think 2 penalties for like 15 yards, I think off the top of my head. So not too bad there. So that's a good start as well, because again, you've got a lot of guys getting extensive game reps, and game one there could be jitters, there could have been false starts, or a million different things, but there wasn't a lot of that. So I think those two fronts are encouraging. But yeah, like you said, and Kirby even mentioned it today, like they got to figure out a way to get turnovers, whether it's however you got to do it, because eventually, like these offenses are too good nowadays to where you're just going to get 3 and outs all along. You got to get stacks and you got to get turnovers, the havoc plays, right? And Georgia didn't have a ton of those. But so is that game plan? Is that what Marshall was doing? Is that combination of both? So I think that's one of the things you want to see more out of the defense is how do you, like, yeah, they were fine. They stopped the run and covered well. That's great. How do you create those negative plays for the opposing offense is something they're going to be working on.
I talked to someone in the building and I asked him about some of that stuff. He said, look, we work on this all the time. And I mean, you and I have seen it because that's one of the few things we actually get to watch when Kirby lets us into practice is you watched him working on turnover protocols, both protecting from and trying to incite. They work on stripping. They have stations. Everybody goes to all the stations and work on trying to get the ball away, trying to intercept the ball, trying to keep the ball from being intercepted, trying to, they run the running backs through a gauntlet to make sure, everyone tries to strip it from them to make sure they don't. There wasn't a whole lot of that. There weren't a whole lot of sacks, again, not on the options. But I asked him, so, well, what about the, third and short? The Georgia couldn't, that was one of my number one issues last year. And Big I says, I'm going to see Josh McCray and Rod Robinson, who I was thinking would be the big guys to kind of get it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care who was back there. And a couple of those plays, you wouldn't have gotten it. And he turned to me and said, well, how many did they rush? And I'm like, well, I don't know. He's like, well, go back and blankety blank. It was mean what he said. I'm a little hurt, that we're friends. But he basically said, go watch the bloody tape and see how many people they brought through the gaps. And I'm like, oh, yeah, well, if they sell the house to stop you on 3rd and 1, I get it. So at that point, hey, maybe check out of that play or gets, and a couple times they brought in a fullback. It's like, okay, well, they brought an extra guy. You brought a fullback. Who missed their block? And there's a great video right now of Micah Morris running around just absolutely killing a cornerback on a guard H-back counter. And on the same right side, Bo Hewley out there gets torched on his block. So it's like, hey, that's great. What a beautiful pull. Oh, man. So there's as many good things as there were a few missed assignments. And I'm just saying the context matters. We can get excited about one play, but you can show somebody in that same play who messed up. There's also, if we look at the stats, if there's missing stats, there's also missing opportunities. But when it does come down to it, you still got to strip the ball away. You got to get it. And I thought the tackling was good. I thought there were a lot of missed tackles last year. It was one of the worst tackling teams they've had in a long time. They tackled well Saturday. So, and like you said, 2 penalties. I'm like, okay. So, and Kirk will actually say that he doesn't want, if you ask him, do you want fewer penalties or something like that? He says, well, it's a balance. Because if you don't have enough penalties, that means you weren't trying hard enough. I mean, he's literally told us that it's a fine line, if you're not being aggressive enough. So I'm not saying go get more, but if I'm a Georgia fan, I'm excited that there's only 2 penalties in the game and you didn't have a lot of guys getting lost. You didn't have to call a timeout because somebody was on the field and you actually had a special team block. So to me, that kind of counts for the defense. They're trying to pump the ball, you block it. That to me is a turnover. And you get on their side of the field. So I was quite impressed.
Yeah, for sure. And to the point about the defense, like that's the one when I mentioned the UMass game earlier, like they got destroyed by UMass's run game last year. And it's that first drive, it was run for, loss 1, run for no gain, and incomplete pass and punt. Like that looks a lot like the Georgia defense. And they, when Kirby talks about the fire and passion and energy and all that stuff, I feel like that especially translates to defense because it's like basketball, right? You hear, okay, rebounding and defenses, yeah, there's fundamentals and whatever. It's about effort as much as anything. I think that's kind of what you say about defense is you got to have enthusiasm and energy and effort on defense as much as you do the right technique, the right fundamentals, all that kind of stuff. And those guys were hype all day long. And you could say, oh, once Georgia got up 14-0, it was pretty clear that, like, yeah, this game is probably over. Marshall's probably not scoring 14 points against this team. And you could have come out and, kind of relax, and Marshall goes down and scores a touchdown. And it's 14-7. You got to score. I mean, that's what we saw with UMass. And they dominated the entire, again, 3 quarters until some of the backups and freshmen came in. So I think from a defensive standpoint, one of the big questions on defense, what is the defensive front going to look like with so many of those guys gone? And they look great. Gabe Harris played well. Kristen Miller is off to a good start. Jordan Hall, Jonah Janye, Elijah Griffin had a tackle. I don't know if it was a tackle for loss, but right at the line of scrimmage, he stepped a kid. So all those guys up front, I thought, played pretty well on the defensive side of the ball, which is a very, very encouraging sign.
Yeah, there's penetration for the defensive line. Big Eye says if they're dominant on that side of the ball, like the 21 team, do you really need the turnovers? If the other team can't score, I'm okay with them being a turnover elite. And that's true. And I remember looking up the turnover stats recently, and Georgia's usually about the middle of the road in the SEC. They're very seldom at the top. And if you've got a good defensive line, that you don't need them as much. But look how much easier that Texas game was, with those turnovers. It's just And then when you get your Alabama and your Ole Miss games where you couldn't turn them over worth a damn, and it just bit you in the ass. So I'm with you. Real quick about that defensive line. When I saw Jordan Hall go out there, I was kind of excited. That's a guy we haven't seen a whole lot from. Kristen Miller did his thing. He looked great. And to see Quintavious Johnson and Gabe Harris on the other sides of those guys, I'm like, okay, all right, if that's how we're rolling out, that's your 4 down lineman, or your lineman with a jack or whatever. Okay, this looks good. They passed the eye test.
Yeah, and one more thing about the turnovers. This is a team I think that's going to need to play complementary football. Like, the defense is going to need to help out the offense. There's your turnovers. You set the offense up with a short field on, like they ever did last year with a strip sack. You get an interception in the red zone to halt the drive, that kind of stuff. That's going to be huge. And like the punt block you mentioned the other day, that Georgia gets the ball on the 20 or whatever, and they I guess they scored a touchdown. I don't remember, but stuff like that. I think this is going to be a team. Kirby preaches that all the time, but this is a team that is going to need to do that, especially early in the year as they continue. These young guys get more comfortable and find their footing as the year goes on. Complimentary football.
Oh yeah, he says it all the time, mainly because he said it under Monken as well, especially that the first year. He said it when he had James Coley, and they couldn't throw the ball anymore. He's like, our defense has to help. And he's right. Plus the offense, if the offense can get a couple first downs, and then all of a sudden the defense is staring, and they have to punt it. But the defense is saying, look, we don't think you can drive 80 yards on us, 95 yards on us. We've got a lot of room behind us to defend, and we're not having to stop you on our 45. So the offense, if they can just get a couple first downs. And remember a few weeks ago when somebody asked Kirby about those quick starts, he said, well, a quick start doesn't have to be touchdown, field goal. It can just be a couple first downs in the punt. And everyone's like, damn it, Kirby, that's like the worst answer of all time. But he made a point. He's like, let's flip the field on them. I trust my defense. We'll hold them. Now they punt to us, and we've gained 20 yards. Okay, well, it's not sexy, but the man's got a couple rings that say it works, so I'll take him at his face value. Of course, we can't talk about overall generalities without talking about what you thought of Gunnar Stockton. So we're still looking at 30,000 views and kind of first impressions. This is his first game in Sanford Stadium. It was tough that his first start had to be in the playoffs against a Notre Dame team, and I won't say he was let down by his teammates, but his teammates didn't help him a whole lot. Now this was his team. He spent 9 months as QB1. He went out there, like I said, they drove down a couple times. He ran the ball. His run game didn't help him on those 3rd and 1s. So he said, screw you guys, I'll do it myself. And I thought Gunnar Stockton had a pretty good day.
Yeah, I thought so. He was fine. I mean, he wasn't asked to do a whole lot, especially once Georgia kind of built up the lead. I suppose somebody posted on the board, like the average depth of target was like 4 yards or whatever. And the one that was kind of downfield a little bit was that one to Oscar Delp on a play action. He underthrew it, and so Delp had to adjust to it, and it kind of limited the amount of yards that play gained. But I think we know Gunnar Stockton can throw the deep ball. I mean, we saw it. He dropped that one in the bucket to Arian Smith on the the infamous Parker Jones play in the Sugar Bowl. That was a great throw before some not good things happened on the sideline. So I think he can do it. I think this is an offense that's going to see a lot of that play action and slides and bootlegs and that kind of stuff. With a guy that's not that tall, I mean, we saw a couple passes batted down the other night. You got to move the pocket a little bit sometimes, and that kind of plays into that. So he was fine. The running, I think, was huge to see. Like we saw what he did in the Sugar Bowl against Texas, which was okay, we got to figure out what we're going to do the rest of this game. We know Gunner can run. Let's spread it out and go from there. Didn't see it as much in the Sugar Bowl, partially because you had no backup and partially because Georgia got behind. So I think this game gave us a good idea of how Georgia's going to deploy Gunner in the run game. And again, it's not – Kirby said it the other day. There were no plays that were, okay, this is a Gunner, sweep to the left. It was reads, and twice he kept it and scored touchdowns. They ran the speed option. When's the last time you saw Georgia run a speed option?
Coach Donovan about flipped the hell out. He was so excited. He texted Mike Bobo during the game. You did that for me and your dad or something.
It's that kind of stuff.
So excited.
We've got a vision of, okay, is Georgia going to call – and I said this in the offseason, Georgia's not going to call 12 or 15 quarterback runs a game. That's just not how Kirby Smart and Mike Bobo are going to be. But speed option, we saw the other day, Gunner can keep it just as easily as he can pitch it. Those zone reads, he can keep it as easily as he can hand it off. And obviously he can scramble and make plays there too. So I think that's the biggest thing I took is we've got a little bit of a picture of this offense is kind of built around Gunner now. This is his team. This is his show. The game plan is built around him. That's kind of what the quarterback run game is going to look like. Zone. He's got to make the defense account for him, and that's something we haven't really seen the past couple of years. And that's going to make the traditional run game better. That's going to open up play action. There's a lot of different things you can do with that. So I think that was my biggest takeaway from Gunner is what the run game is going to look like with him.
True. I mean, it makes the run game easier across the board. So many teams cheated, not literally cheated, but the defenses were less honest, knowing that Carson Beck wasn't going to keep it.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, if he does keep it, which he never will do, we'll give you that one.
Right.
But we will sell out for what you were going to do on 95% of those when you fake like you're keeping it is you're handing it off. So we're going to track the guy who's going to get the ball. We're going to crash in. We're going to crash. We're just going to keep crashing. You keep it one time, yeah, you'll probably pick up 17 yards, but you won't do it more than once.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to crash. And they just did over and over again. Keith Simmons says it's good to see Puglisi throw. I want to talk about him next, but I will say this about anyone who doubts that Gunner can throw it down the field. Gunner has a better long ball than Carson Beck. And I'm not saying he's a better quarterback than Carson Beck. Carson Beck is a fantastic QB. You saw that the other night. I mean, he beat Clemson last year. He set the Georgia season record for accuracy, and completions. I'm a big Carson Beck fan of his abilities. But there were times last year when he would throw long balls that were just inaccurate. I don't know if it's just they couldn't work out the timing or whatever it was, but they just very seldom hit a receiver in stride. They're overthrows, underthrows all year long. When I've watched Gunner for the last when did we start going up and catching him in his high school games?
5 years ago. 4 years ago. Whatever it was. 5 years ago.
5 years ago. He'd have 6 or 7, 8 touchdowns, and half of them would be running, half of them be throwing. But a lot of those throws, they weren't short throws. I mean, he threw some bombs. The guy to mediocre receivers. I don't think he had any receivers that had a D1 offer. Point is, he can make those throws. So anybody questions it, got no compunctions about his arm, the wind up or how long it takes him to throw it. He'll get it out there. I have no worries about it. I'd like to see more of it this week. But to your point about building the offense around him, if something happens to him on all these crazy runs, because he's tough as nails, he doesn't like to slide. Ryan Puglisi came in. Ryan looked great. You saw a little bit faster arm, a little bit. I mean, he's got a cannon for an arm there. Quicker to throw it, quicker release. He gets the ball out a lot. I thought everything I saw from Puglisi, I liked. I mentioned him as my offensive breakout player of the year, not because any shot against Gunner, but just because I worried Gunner's going to get hurt. And there's not a difference. If you put him in, you can still run the same plays that you call for Gunnar Stockton with Ryan Puglisi.
Yeah, for sure. He's I believe he played baseball in high school, so he's a good enough athlete to keep defenses honest, and he's got the rocket arm that we heard about. We have heard about ever since he got on campus. So it's big to let him play. Like if Gunnar gets hurt again, like last year, obviously Carson gets hurt in the SEC championship, and okay, you've got a guy in Gunnar Stockton who's hadn't taken a ton of meaningful game reps, but he's been in the system forever. Ryan Puglisi got to Athens last spring and missed last spring because he had a stress fracture, I think, in his knee or leg. So he hadn't been around that long, and that was those were his first game snaps the other day. So you don't have a lot of experience if Gunnar gets hurt. And Gunnar, I don't want to say he's likely to get hurt, but if he takes a big, all it takes is one huge hit, like we saw against Texas last year, to knock him out of the game. So it was big to get Puglisi in. I thought he looked good. He had the nice throw to Elias Williams on the wheel route down the sideline for a touchdown. You would think he would be able to get some more reps this weekend, and maybe Georgia gets in another blowout situation down the line and he gets some. But every rep he gets in a game, I think, is huge. Because again, you don't, if you're Kirby Smart, you want to at least be in the place where, okay, if Gunnar goes down, we're not screwed. Like obviously it makes things more difficult. He's a younger guy, whatever. But you don't want to be in a spot where, okay, if Gunnar sprains an ankle and is out 2 or 3 weeks, then the season's over, right? So every rep Puglisi gets is valuable in that regard. I looked good the other day.
No, hey, absolute gold. Well, same with Bo Hewley and who was it? Daniel Calhoun that came in. And again, remember, folks, Georgia scored 45 points because they called off the Dogs, but also after those first 2 drives, they lost the entire right side of their line. They were also playing without their starting cornerback in Dalen Everett. So it's not like Georgia rolled out there completely healthy by the end of to start the game. A couple guys were in boots midweek. 3 starters were in boots. 2 of them played. One of them they kept out. Dalen Everett, the starting cornerback, dealing with an ankle issue. Let's touch on the status of that right side of the line real quick. Kirby Smart was asked about it today. Asked him kind of describe what was wrong with him. He just said lower body extremities. You need to watch the video. It's the last question of the press conference, and Kirby kind of shot me down. But you actually saw Juan Gaston earlier today, and we'll use that as a springboard to talk about the freshman that got in. Go ahead.
Yeah, I ran into him.
On the injuries.
Myself and another reporter actually walked by him as we were walking in for interviews this morning. He had his left knee in a brace and foot in a boot. And he was, he had it propped on one of those little scooter things that he was kind of scooting around on with his right leg, which again, like I put on the board, like one, you don't want to put any added stress on that ankle anyway, right? But he's a big dude to be putting weight on that ankle. And that's 350 pounds that you're putting on a sprained ankle, tweaked ankle, whatever it is. So part of it's precautionary. I wouldn't expect to see him play this week just because there's no real need to. You could get Daniel Calhoun some valuable reps that he needs. And same at right tackle. Ernest Green has got lower body, whatever. Bo Hewley needs reps. Do you get Jamal Merriweather some reps at tackle? Do you get move Ernest Green back to right and have somebody you want to play left tackle? There's reps you can get. I know it's kind of a dud for fans and even for us covering it, but the benefit of playing teams like Marshall and Austin Peay to start the year is you can not rush guys back and get guys some live reps against another opponent. So I wouldn't bet on seeing them play just because they don't need them. I mean, I could be wrong, but that would be. My guess is you hold them out this week and try to get them back for Tennessee next week, and then you got a bye week after that before Alabama comes in. So that would be my guess.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Speaking of Juan Gaston, he got the start. Someone else in the comment section here. Shout out to Tequila Dog, who's listening to us in Nebraska. He's traveling through Nebraska, flat as hell. Got nothing better to do than listen to us. Chavez Jr. here. Great to see Ethan Barbour get the start, and Elias Williams is a mismatch nightmare. Great signs for the young tight ends. You had mentioned Elias Williams, who didn't get into it late in the game, but, scored a touchdown. You got to be excited. It's like, hey, my first reception as a college football player is a touchdown. Not too shabby. And Barber starts as a true freshman. I'm thinking if I'm Riddell and Colton Heinrich, I'm like, what the hell, Kirby?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I saw 9 run out there, and I thought it was Colby Young. I was like, okay, that makes sense. Colby Young would be starting. He was number 9. He's number 8. So I was like, oh, that's
Yeah.
Ethan Barbora's out there, like for some reason. So that was, and then when I was watching earlier, he was the fullback on 3rd and 1. Obviously, the play didn't go well, but it looks like in those goal line packages, he's going to be the guy at fullback, which you've got a highly ranked tight end that you can have run routes for a fullback spot. Like that's not that Georgia necessarily lines up in that formation a ton, but that's an even an added weapon you've got. So yeah, those guys are studs. I think it seems like Kirby isn't thrilled with how the tight ends are, at least in the passing game so far, because he's mentioned a couple times like, well, I judge these guys based on if they can break tackles or not. And it's like, they weren't super involved the other day. I know Lawson Lucky had a drop on a 3rd down, I think. So not to say those guys are in danger of losing their jobs, but at some point Kirby might be like, hey, let's see if these guys, and even Jaden Riddell and Colton Heinrich, let's see what these guys can do, because we want an impact from that tight end spot. So we'll see. Again, I don't know that the tight ends getting only a few targets the other day is any indication of what the offense will look like against an SEC opponent, but it is worth watching for sure, because the freshmen, and again, even the Riddell and Heinrich are pushing them hard for sure.
Yeah, and those guys got a lot of snaps too. Heinrich and Riddell. I'm not crapping on them, but I'm like, if you're going to call that route, Colton Heinrich would have loved that wheel route, and Jaden Riddell, I put him in fullback in a second. But to your point, a little bit of nothing against the kind of your senior leaders, if you will. Delp and Lawson Lucky, they got a lot of snaps as well. They didn't block well last year when it comes to the grading out thing. So I'm thinking Kirby has demanded them to block better. And right off the bat, I saw those guys laying some lumber. So I'm always big on the tight ends, and I was excited to see a lot of 12 personnel. I'm like, okay, you got 6 different guys, you're mixing and matching, but we are seeing 2 tight ends out there, even though you have this huge room of wide receivers. So I'm like, Todd Hartley's probably a happy camper up there in the press or in the coach's box seeing that. Some of the other freshmen that stood out to you, I think Elijah Griffin got in right off the bat. Had a nice. Did he get a tackle for loss? I mean, I saw him jacking.
I don't know if it was technically a tackle. It was right at the line. Like the kid was running kind of like a sweep, and he tried to cut it up, and he met him right at the line of scrimmage. But yeah, that's one of the freshmen we expected to see. Bo Walker got a few carries. Talon Taylor got in fairly early. Like he. Gunner threw a deep ball to him on the 2nd drive, 3rd drive, maybe. Barbour and Williams, obviously. Gaston, of course, starting at right guard. Like I feel like it's kind of almost been like we're not talking enough about how impressive it is. Especially like when Andrew Thomas came in, it was like, okay, yeah, he's starting as a freshman, but also a lot of the recruits were still some of the lesser offensive line classes that had been brought in the late Richt era, right?
Yeah.
They've been recruiting these offensive linemen for however long Kirby's been here. Juan Gaston still comes in and earns a starting nod as a freshman over a guy in Daniel Calhoun that I think a lot of people, myself included, kind of just assumed would start there. So that is wild. None of the freshmen really did, again, not till later in the game, played in the secondary. Dominic Kelly, who's supposed to be a 2026 kid, he reclassified to 2025, got in and had a great pass breakup on a comeback route on the sideline, which is impressive to see. But yeah, it's a loaded freshman group that I think. I mean, Kirby keeps talking about we don't have depth, we don't have depth, we don't have depth. You got to get the freshmen. The freshmen have got to be your depth now.
Yeah.
And you saw plenty of potential in a lot of those guys the other day, which again, that's why these game reps are so big, because if you get down to a point at a position where you got to play the freshmen, you don't want their first reps coming, at Auburn in the middle of October in the 4th quarter, right? So every rep for those guys.
Quarter at Tennessee.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's huge. It's crazy to think, because part of you thinks, man, like Elijah Griffin playing as a freshman is crazy. And it is. It's very impressive. But also it's like, 5 years ago, would there be more veteran guys in front of him to make that path even more difficult? And now those are the guys that head off for greener pastures. So
Yeah, JJ Haney got in too very early.
JJ Haney got in
definitely
early.
on third down. He was part of that. When they bring in the kind of speed package, they call it the Jaguar package. They had him out there as well. I thought that was good. Saw CJ Wiley amongst the wide receivers.
Thomas Blackshear had a catch. That's what Kirby said after the game was his favorite moment. Thomas Blackshear gets a catch, and the entire receiver room is going crazy on the sidelines for him. And that's a kid like Nate Frazier last year. He didn't get to Georgia until the summer. He didn't go through spring practice. So to already be in a spot where even in a blowout you can get in the game and get targets is very impressive for Thomas Blackshear.
You notice they put in Cortez Smith at center.
Yeah, that's one.
Well, I wonder who told everybody that was going to be the second string center.
I'm glad you mentioned that because I had forgotten about that, and because we saw that pregame, and that's a wow moment for me just because we talked all year or all offseason. It's like, okay, if Drew Bobo goes down, your backup center is Malachi Tolliver. Didn't get much action. Walt Flynn came from UCF. I don't think he played much, if at all.
Yeah.
And Cortez Smith's a true freshman. True freshman at center, there's obviously, as we all know, there's a lot that goes into playing center other than just blocking. And Cortez Smith to have picked all that up so fast to be the number 2 guy. And again, at a spot where you're one play away from having a lot on your plate is very impressive and a very positive reflection on what Cortez Smith has done since he got on campus.
Yeah, a lot of redshirt freshmen we'll be talking about. And I want to mention the freshmen to walk over into the transfers, but before we get to the whole idea of newcomers. But there were a few redshirt freshmen that kind of popped up. And one of the names that you mentioned earlier who was very exciting was Peanut, Dwight Phillips. You mentioned him right off the bat of a guy that kind of stood out. You did a story on him today. The question we get right here is, do you think Peanut could be an X factor this year? His speed is different and something the running back room has been missing. And I'm like, yeah.
I think so because, again, I kind of thought, okay, Nate Frazier, number 1, probably Chauncey Bowens as the backup, Bo Walker, maybe Dwight Phillips. Dwight Phillips is in on the first drive and scores the first touchdown of the game. Then I think the first play of the second half, he rips off an 18-yarder. That's 2 explosives in the run. He had 60 yards on 5 carries. Like that
seems good.
Yeah. So, and that's one again. I think I don't want to say he's been forgotten about, but he has
been. Nobody was talking about him until second.
When Chauncey Bowens has had a great camp, and so he's a guy again with the crazy speed, and he's bulked up a lot. That's what Kirby said today. The weight room was huge for him, especially in the spring. Yeah, that's a very big development, I think, for that running back room if he's becoming more of a complete back. And you send him on a wheel route down the sideline, and you've got a linebacker on him. What linebacker's staying with him down the side? There's nobody. So that's a very big development.
Swift showed how nasty that was.
Yeah, James Cook did it how many times? So that's a very big development, I think, for this running back room. If the more comfortable Dwight Phillips gets, and the more he understands the offense and everything, we saw it that first touchdown. You give him a crease, and he explodes through it, and he's gone. So that's not he's running away from these guys because they're Marshall players. That's literally world class speed that Dwight Phillips has got. So yeah, that's a very interesting, very positive development for Georgia's running back room if he can be a positive factor this year.
I got another redshirt freshman for you that kind of stood out to me, Justin Green. All of a sudden, I started. I'm like, wait a minute! I'm flipping through my notes. I'm like, who the hell is 91?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he almost had a sack. I don't know if the guy, I guess, tossed it away or he tackled him just beyond the line of scrimmage. But yeah, that was one where it was like, oh yeah, I was like you. I was like 91. Oh yeah, Justin Green, because he's another guy that kind of gets forgotten about. All those defensive linemen that came in last year, came in this year.
Nasir Johnson.
Nasir Johnson, I was gonna say Nasir Johnson's the same way. A guy that they were very high on in high school and then didn't really do much. He didn't get to school till the summer. He might have been hurt, and then he's another one. So Nnamdi Agboko didn't another one. So I don't know if he's a redshirt or not, but there's a lot of those guys. That's a very, very deep.
Oh, yeah, did Agboko get a redshirt last year? Let me look at him up real quick. No,
I bet he didn't. I bet he
did not.
Bet he played too much. But a guy that didn't play a ton. So
no, I take that back. They do have him listed as a redshirt freshman.
oh, okay.
They also have one of your favorite guys, Sokovie White-Helton, also had some plays.
No, number 2 punt returner, I guess, depending on or how it looks. He was in pretty early, as well with the starting.
Somebody lost their job early in that game. That's not a shot against Zach Branch. It's just there are a couple times the ball's going to hit the ground. Kirby Smart's like, well, if you're just going to let it hit the ground, I'll throw somebody in there who's willing to go up and catch it.
Mm-hmm.
He knows what to do.
For sure. So there's not a lot of those guys. Again, the year 1 to year 2. I mean, Chauncey Bowens. I guess he redshirted.
We should do a story on like the redshirt freshman that kind of showed out.
I mean, the year 1 to year 2 thing, especially for the guys who didn't have spring last year, is huge.
Yeah. So we talked about the newcomers and the freshmen, the year 2 guys who were still considered freshmen, but they were kind of newcomers in that we saw them play a lot. We didn't see them play enough last year because, I mean, you can only play in 4 games before you burn your red shirt. So you just listed off about 10 of those guys that mattered. The transfers were some of the guys that everybody was looking forward to see. They want to see Zachariah Branch, Noah Thomas. From the year before, London Humphreys getting out there. A lot of new faces that people want to see. Zion Branch, Adrian Maddox. Trying to think of who else. The other transfers that were out there. Xavier McLeod, who we barely saw, last year.
Joshua Horton got some reps on the D line.
Yeah, but I guess of those, the premier guy had to be Zachariah Branch. I mean, he actually graded out the highest wide receiver in the SEC, according to Pro Football Focus, with a 91. That's just unheard of.
I mean, the dude had 95 yards on 3 catches, and if you add up all 3 of his catches, they were thrown like 8 yards down the field.
Yeah, it was 85 yards after contact, or after catch.
It's all him. I mean, the first one's a quick screen. As soon as Gunner threw that, I was like, oh god! I could see the vent complaining. Run, quick screen, 3 and out, punt. And it's just they've been waiting to do this all offseason. But then it's Zachariah Branch you're throwing to it, and he makes some guys miss. He weaves through whatever. The next one that was on when I was watching earlier. You get man coverage, and it was kind of like a rub route from Oscar Delp where he's going on like a fade, and Branch runs a slot underneath him, catch 15 yards after the catch, and then we all remember the touchdown where he's literally didn't even catch it on the run, just was standing there and sprints 48 yards or whatever it was for a touchdown. I mean, he's ridiculous with the ball in his hand, and that's a guy that you just figure it out, get the ball in his hand, and let it go. Didn't really see Noah Thomas. I think he had 1 target on like a fade to the end zone that was just out of his reach. But that's another one of those guys that we've heard has had a huge camp, and then London Humphreys caught a touchdown. London Humphreys was one where he catches that touchdown against Clemson last year, and then kind of just had fits and starts all year. So
turned into Kaiser Soze, man, he was gone.
And so that's an encouraging sign, I think, for the receiver corps too. And then defensively, it was Kyron Jones that started at safety, sporting the big club on his hand, but I know Adrian Maddox played. I know Zion Branch played. I don't know if Jaden Harris got in or not. But all those guys are battling and working. And like Javaris Robinson said, just because you played a lot doesn't mean you played at Georgia. So
Zion actually led the team in tackles.
Yeah,
they were all in garbage time, but it was
something.
That's still 7 tackles in the game for the University of Georgia Bulldogs.
Yeah,
more than 99.9% of the universe could ever say. So
that's again, like I was talking about with Puglisi, we'll see a lot of those guys this week, I would imagine, and as that competition kind of continues to go on. But Zachariah Branch again, you can't not talk about that guy because what he did was just it reminds me of like when Colby Young arrived and had his first G Day. Was like he had 3 contested catches, like 2 for first downs and 1 for a touchdown, like a jump ball. It's like, oh yeah, that's why Georgia went and got that guy. That's what it's like. It's like, oh, Zachariah Branch had 85 of his 91 or 95 yards after the catch. Yeah, that's why they went and got him. So
And again, that's kind of why I was excited after the game. I'm like, okay, you threw it to Branch 3 times and he scored for you, he almost had 100 yards receiving. That seems good. Oh, we know Nate Frazier is special. Nate Frazier was breaking tackles, which he didn't do last year. Okay, so Nate Frazier is better. Oh, Georgia has a running quarterback for a while. I mean, didn't he lead the team in rushing?
He ended up leading the team in rushing. I got the stats.
Yeah. That hasn't happened
3 yards. Dwight Phillips had 60.
Yeah, a quarterback hasn't led Georgia since Justin Fields, 2018. So you got a quarterback who can run. And this is after, you got to remember, I just watched Georgia Tech and who was the other team? Auburn.
Auburn.
Lead their quarterback, lead their teams, make huge third and fourth down conversions with running quarterbacks. And you saw it all day Saturday everywhere. A running quarterback it's a nightmare for a defense. And like you said, the read option and the speed. I'm like, okay, so they've got a premier running quarterback, a premier running back. You have a speedster running back who scores the first touchdown for you. You got a slot guy who, like I said, was a hummingbird on amphetamines. That guy can fly. You got the big Colby Young. You got tight ends that are blocking. And Georgia could run the ball and they could stop the run. What's not the love?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. Well, they just lost the whole right side of their line. Damn it. Injuries already. And I don't know. So you can see why I was brought down, because I was just thinking about all the positives. And, I'm very Munson-esque. I'm always going, this won't last. But I can be very pessimistic. But I left thinking that was really good. And all those names that we've been following for years getting into the game, making themselves known. It's like, hey, look, there's London Humphreys. There's Xavier McLeod,
Mm-hmm.
That's great. Oh, Jordan Hall's healthy. Holy shit. It's been 84 years since Jordan Hall's been healthy. And he was in and, making plays right off the bat. So I was kind of gung-ho, but yeah, then I read Twitter. Now I'm depressed.
Always a mistake.
There was a question here from Keith Simmons. He says, do you think Brett Thorson will be ready?
I mean, Kirby was saying today he's close to being cleared by the doctors or whatever. I mean, I don't think we'll see him this week because, once again, you can get by with getting a couple punts out of Drew Miller for the week. I think if they wanted to, they could play it super safe and have Miller handle punts against Tennessee and then have another off week and then bring it back for Bama. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. I mean, Drew Miller was fine the other day. He punted well in the Sugar Bowl, so he's proven himself capable. So I think
averaged 45 yards a punt, 48.
Yeah, so I think that's one you had the luxury of being careful with. So yeah, I wouldn't bet on this week. I think the question is like, is so and so going to play this week? If you're having to ask the question, the answer is probably no, just because you want to be safe going into SEC play, especially with the first two SEC games you got. I mean, you're at Tennessee, who looked pretty good against Syracuse, and then you got Alabama, who they lost the other day, but it's still Alabama and Georgia hasn't been able to beat them for 10 years. So yeah, that's a pretty tough opening stretch, and I think they want to be as healthy as they possibly can be.
Well,
going into that.
Here's the thing on Brett Thorson. He's healthy. He can punt. And Kirby kind of said, he basically alluded to it without coming out and saying it. From inside the program, what I understand is the only hesitation is they don't want him to get hit.
Mm-hmm.
And Kirby said, well, what if he had to make a tackle? Something along those lines, or you hope if he is out there. So that's the fear. He can punt fine. It's not the landing. But now he's one of the 11 out there. Mm-hmm. And Georgia has to prove that they can cover. They are working, new gunners. Game one, you don't know how your gunners are going to work out. But all of a sudden you see that every punt those guys are being dropped. Remember, there were 2 years where Georgia didn't give up a return yard on a punt.
Mm-hmm.
That is unheard of. But if you actually go back and look at, I think it's 2022 or 2023, there are only 13 teams listed for punt return yards because Georgia's not even on there. Or if they were, it would have been like -5 yards or something, where a guy caught it and they just swallowed him up. Then you feel comfortable, I don't want to say gimpy, but putting out a punter You could put out a 97-pound punter and not worry about him getting hit. But if all of a sudden he has to return it, and Brett Thorson, that crazy Australian, he's going to dive into the guy, and hurt himself. So, and the reason we're talking so much about a punter, I know we're looking people like, what the hell? I'm going to turn this off. You've seen what he can do against Tennessee. So changes the when he can punt him 71 yards back, that's something you'd like to have in up in Knoxville. So, but that's the fear is bringing him back. Johnny Prescott said, just joining. Any news on Gaston's ankle? I like saying it, Gaston, but it's not as bad as it could have been. If it'd been a high ankle sprain or something like that, I think he'd already have had surgery. So.
Yeah, I think that's what your fear is that it's tightrope surgery, and then again on a guy that big, that's 5-6 weeks probably, and that's you're out Tennessee, you're out Alabama. So, but yeah, like you said, not as bad as it could have been for what it sounds like.
Randy says that Thornton was hammering balls in the kicking net about 10 feet from the other day. Yeah, he's freaking killing it. I've got a lot of questions about some of the other teams, and I think we'll kind of switch gears here and talk about them. I do like this one for you. Remember, this was a recruiting show, and it can still be a recruiting show. If you have a recruiting question, go ahead and pepper Jed with it. But I like this one from D. Brown. When's USC going to lose a recruit or two? We're getting the number one class in the end. Georgia's sitting at number 2, right behind Southern Cal.
Believe so, yeah. And that's
Southern Cal's known to lose them.
Once the game day visits start, you get these guys on campus, and you get to signing day, and you get I don't know, whoever's like, man, California is a long way from home. That is a long, and again, there's a world where USC doesn't look,
and they're mediocre.
Yeah, so they have 4 or 5 losses again. Yeah, so I have no idea what USC's commit list looks like off the top of my head, but I would say it's a pretty solid bet that they'll lose 1 or 2 over the next 3 months or whatever till signing day.
Yeah, and probably lose one of those guys to Georgia at some point. Good question from Anthony Jones. It's kind of a tough one for you, though. It says, how long do you think Kirby keeps the starters in the game Saturday? Which normally would be like, we'll get 4 scores. But, at the same time, you want them to practice and be good. Because remember, a lot of these starters are still new to their positions. Mm-hmm. And you want them to get as many snaps and reps before they go face Tennessee. So is this a game where you were thinking, hey, we need to continue to prep for the rest of the season? Or, no, our guys are good. Let's not risk losing the left side of the line like we lost the entire right side of the line. Once we get our 3 or 4 scores, then let's sit everybody and get the others in.
Yeah, I mean, I think it'll be at least a half. I mean, at minimum, no matter what. And then, I mean, I'm trying to think of when Puglisi came in, like at the end of the 3rd quarter, I think, or when Georgia took over with a minute left. So I think it's a fine line again, because last year you had Carson Beck, who you pretty much knew what you had, and then you could get Gunner reps at the time. But now Gunner needs all the reps. Gunner needs reps too, and now he's your starter. So
yeah,
you got to figure that out. So it's a balance, and it's tough. Again, like I mentioned with Marshall, I think once you get like a 2-touchdown lead, you're probably safe. But these guys need reps. I mean, you gotta get them reps. So I would say probably middle of the 3rd quarter. But it obviously depends on the game. I don't see Kirby taking out starters before halftime.
No,
but for sure
they'll never do that. And to that same point, I was thinking about why did we not see more downfield passing? And I'm like, well, you don't need to, because they were running for 5.5 yards a clip. And if I'm the offensive coordinator and I can pick up 5.5 yards a run, or averaging that, we'll never throw the ball again. This will be 1942 football all over again. But at the same time, it's like, well, you do, yeah, and you're up 35-0. But at the same time, you do need to throw that 9 route. You do need to throw those deep ends, and you got to throw those mesh patterns. And make your offensive line pass protect. Let your receivers run those routes. Get Noah Thomas a ball. Get Colby Young a ball down the field. Let Jacoby White-Helton go run a 9 route. Just let him fly down there and hit him. Not to kind of rub salt into Marshall's wounds, but you need to practice that because you need to be able to. You don't want to be your first, deep crossing routes to be against Tennessee. So, and people go, why are you throwing against poor Austin Peay? Well, Austin Peay's not a bad football team. They won't be as good as Georgia, but at the same time, practice those routes and practice that stuff. So I would like to see Georgia leave their starters in at least the first half, and then maybe 2 drives in the second, if they score like they should. And then at that point, now take them out because you're up by 3, 4, 5 scores. And if you get somebody hurt up that high, that's on you. So don't be dumb.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just my take. I'm hoping Tequila Dog isn't driving because he does have some questions for us. He says, hey guys, you got a comment on Alabama and Arch Manning, and did you hear the rant from the legend on Feinbaum Gold? I did not catch the rant, but
I didn't know either.
I did want to kind of shift gears and like we said, and talk about some of these other teams. What the hell did you think of the whole Arch Manning and Texas versus Ohio State game?
Yeah, we were watching some of it in the press box, and I looked up into the third quarter or whatever, and he had like 40 yards, and I was like, I haven't been locked in on this game, watching every snap, but that seems like not good. And then his mechanics just looked weird. Like he was like shot putting the ball almost. I don't know if that's
Uncle Rico, man. The people have been videos of him and Uncle Rico together side by side, and I'm like, we saw him throw, and he's never made those throws.
Yeah, I can't
never done that.
To have watched every snap when he played last year, but that looked weird. And I don't know if that's like him trying to do that on purpose to get it around a defender or what, but that was weird. And then, I think that last drive, they had a 2nd and 5 and a 3rd and 5, and he misses 2 guys on open crossing routes over them, or drag routes, not even deep crossers that you've got to hit if you're going to be a solid quarterback. You hit either one of those, you keep the chains moving, and who knows, they go down, score a touchdown, and win, maybe, or score a touchdown, send it to overtime. So it was weird. Like I saw him make a couple plays with his legs, which we knew. I kind of like Gunner, like he can do that. But that interception he threw was horrible. It was a bad decision. It was a bad throw. He threw it late. He should have had a second one. That one that got overturned on replay. So yeah, it was. Yeah. He'll be fine. I think we all know he's got the ridiculous expectations on him, and that's not fair to the kid. He doesn't really seem like one that's leaned into it really hard, which I think some kids have and would. He doesn't seem like he's playing it up and trying to be God's gift to quarterbacking. But he'll be fine. They got enough around. They'll be fine, I think, but it was weird. It was definitely weird seeing some of the mechanical stuff in your life. And if there's any kid that should ever have good quarterback mechanics, it's him, right?
He does. That's what drove me crazy because, again, I wasn't watching the game, but when I went back and, you have all the Temu, Pat McAfee's on Twitter all trying to break down game film and tell us, what happened with that. They were like, look at this play, look at this one. I'm like, that's not how he throws. We've seen him in high school. We watched his film. We've watched this kid for years. He's never thrown like that. And it's tough. Your first start is on the road at the defending national champions, and they're good. So I don't think he'll do that again. I just don't.
Yeah,
he won't play like that against Georgia. It just that won't happen.
Like that's the funny thing is like how different. Like if Georgia played Alabama this week, Georgia would be what, a touchdown favorite? Probably 5-6 points. If Georgia played Texas this week, Georgia's 2-3 point, definitely a favorite probably. But like how, and then that Tennessee game looks different And again, I don't know how good Syracuse is going to be. Fran Brown did a great job last year. They might not be as good this year. I don't. Again,
They lost a lot.
I haven't spent the offseason pouring over the Syracuse depth chart like I probably should have, but Tennessee looked good. That game next week, again, it's their first game against an SEC caliber defense, a Georgia defense that looked great. That game looks a little more difficult than maybe it did last week. So, but then after this week, it could be something different. If Kentucky or if Ole Miss struggles with Kentucky, then you say, okay, well maybe the Ole Miss game doesn't look as hard, and the Kentucky game looks like a slightly more challenging test. So I don't know. It all changes week by week, but yeah, again, like Alabama and Texas, those are going to be knockdown, drag-out fights in Athens, whether they lose out from here to those games or not.
So, well, I was going to lead in with I'm not worried about Arch Manning. It might have been a situation where all the pressure, all the TV commercials, everything's leaning on him. And he's in a tough situation. First game of the year, first start. Okay, it wasn't great. But that defense is way too good. There's too many tools around him for us to write it off after one game. Hell, I mean, Ohio State lost 2 games last year. So
yeah.
I'm not worried about it. I would be worried though as an Alabama fan.
Yes. Yeah. Because
I'm like, okay, I can point to great things around Texas that will haul their asses out of the funk that they are in. But I'm looking at Alabama seeing a much more flawed team.
And that's one like everybody remembers, because there were so few of them, the losses in the Saban era, and so many of them were not fluky necessarily, but they came down to a weird thing here, or a break here, or a team kicks a last second field goal. They went down to Florida State and got beat. Now, like, is Florida State gonna be better than last year? Like, sure, but like everyone's trying to say like Florida State's like a playoff team now. Like, I'm not ready to go there either. So I think Florida State is pretty. I'd say probably like comfortably like an 8-win team, and then maybe they could go from there. Mm-hmm. But like a perfect example is Alabama gets down. They come back. Florida State kid muffs the punt, bounces off his leg. Alabama gets it back to a 7-point game with 11 minutes left. And you're like, okay, this is where Alabama gets a stop, gets the ball back, scores a touchdown, gets another stop, kicks a field goal. And if Florida State went out on like a 5-minute drive and shoved it down their throat and scored again to go up 14, and the game was over. And that's where that's where some of the Alabama mojo is maybe lost. And all the cultures, people talk about the culture under DeBoer and players doing this and whatever. I don't know. We're not Alabama insiders, and at least I don't claim to be. I don't know about you, but it's just it's weird to see, because I was very sure Tommy Castellanos talked a lot of crap about Alabama in the offseason, and you're like, okay, Alabama, those guys are going to be so
they're going to kill him, yes,
and beat the brakes off of them, and they didn't. They had a great opening drive that scored. I remember looking at my phone and said, okay, Alabama 8-minute opening drive touchdown. Yeah, this game is going to go about how I thought it was going to go. And then it didn't. The defense didn't play great. The offense struggled. And again, they tried to make the comeback, and then for credit of Florida State too. I mean, again, we were all maybe a little bit wrong about Florida State, what they were going to be. Florida State bounces back and stems the tide, no pun intended, I think, and holds them off. So, but yeah, Alabama's got, they got to go to Georgia. That's a tough game. They got to play at Auburn, which is going to be weird no matter what, no matter who wins. That's always a weird game. They play Vanderbilt. Didn't go well last year. They play LSU. LSU won on the road at Clemson. They play Oklahoma, who's supposed to be new and improved. So, yeah, there's a scenario where Alabama loses like 4 games, maybe 5, and I cannot even imagine. We've seen this at LSU too, where like Brian Kelly is an outsider, so to speak, right? He's from he'd never coached further south than Cincinnati or whatever, and I think maybe you get a little bit less of a grace period. You know what I mean? And like Kalen DeBoer is going the same way. He comes from obviously coached at Washington.
We banned him.
It's different. It's different. It's a different culture, and I think it either goes really well for you or it doesn't. Saban has his roots in the North. He came down and obviously did what he did. It's not off to a great start for Kalen DeBoer. He's got talent. He's got time to turn it around.
Saban fit the South. his mindset, his personality was. He was very well respected. Most people don't realize that he started up north, and they don't remember that, Hell, they don't remember that about Bear Bryant either. So, we're some of the places that he coached. But the point is, it's that mentality kind of fit, and I'm not saying I don't get into the whole culture thing. It's tough from the outside looking in to know what the culture is really like, and it's easy to point to one or two things. But if I'm a Alabama fan, I'm like, as someone pointed out, they're 5-5 in their last 10 games, and they're lost 5 of 6 on the road or something like that. And I'm like, this is they're not playing well outside of Tuscaloosa.
Mm-hmm.
I'm worried, and at the same time, you also have to be a little annoyed because everyone is reveling in your unraveling. They are so excited because Alabama's been on top for so long. Any sort of we love to build people up. We talk about how they're the greatest ever. We start comparing them to the greats in whatever field. And the minute they have a weakness in the armor, we love to tear them down. That's how it is. And everyone's lining up to get their pound of flesh out of Alabama. I'm here for it. Hey, everybody's been looking up at Alabama forever. And if they are no longer, as someone said earlier, they don't have that Alabama aura, or that Alabama benefit of the doubt from the referees.
Like Alabama, they're still at that point as a program where like every time they lose, it sends shockwaves throughout the sport. We're like, oh, Alabama lost.
Yeah,
and it's like we're going down a road to where the mystique, like you said, is gone, and it's like, oh, okay, Alabama lost. Like, not to say they're going to be like a bottom feeder, but like that aura is still there because all these people. I think about recruits. All these recruits that grew up, they don't know anything different, right? Than just a dominant Alabama. And so every time Alabama loses, it's just a stunner, and it's getting to be less and less of a stunner. I think every time. I mean, when's the last time Alabama went 5-5 over any stretch of 10 games? I mean, not Las Vegas. They're not even close. When's the last time Alabama went 7-3? Over a stretch of any 10 games. It probably didn't happen much under Saban. So it's weird over there in Tuscaloosa. It's weird. The vibes aren't great, as the kids say.
Yeah, we can't, as a neighbor says, I'm not laughing at Alabama until UGA handles this business. Yeah, Georgia's got no room to laugh at those guys.
No. And I think it's so weird because I was looking at the Alabama board last night, and their board thinks that they've got no chance against Georgia. It's the weirdest thing to see. And I can guarantee you that is not what the majority of the Georgia fan base feels going into that game.
It was that way with Florida. Florida fans, the vast majority of them for a while there would be like, we got no chance against Georgia. But then I was never in that mindset. I'm like, I don't care if it's a 2022 team or 2021 team. I'm so used to, because I started covering Georgia I started school in 1990 when Florida fans think football was invented in 1990, because all they would ever talk about is the record starting in 1990. They never wanted to talk about the 80s or the 70s or anything before that. And I started going down there in 93 for the red and black. And there were so many drives home that you couldn't listen to the radio because it's about Georgia getting their asses kicked in Jacksonville. And right now I'm thinking, oh boy, DJ Lagway, just when you get beat so bad or so often, you have that in the back of your head. And so for you and me, if we go over to Bama Online and see them talking about, oh, Georgia's going to destroy them, you're like, what? Who? Georgia who? Georgia State? Georgia Tech? Yeah, Haynes King, he's a bad dude. But, Bulldogs? Second 26? Nah, don't you. But again, I like Georgia's chances a lot better now with Texas and Alabama, but my butt would be a lot more puckered at Auburn and Tennessee. They both got quarterbacks, man. So it's going to be something. A lot of people talking about Glenn Schumann or Dan Lanning going to Alabama next. They would fit the thing, but here's the thing. You can't fire him. You can't fire DeBoer. He could go 5-7 this year. You can't fire him. 7-5. Not going to happen. Not with 67. I've heard 67 to $70 million buyout. It varies. It bounces around. Nobody. I don't think there were any big names last year, any big coaches who were let go that had big buyouts, because all these teams are down $20 to $25 million in their budgets due to revenue sharing. They don't have it. So unless you know somebody who can come in and write that check, an outside person, if you know an Alabama fan who can come in and write a $70 million check, then that guy should have showed up and given that $70 million to Kalen DeBoer to buy him some better players.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my take on it. We had a question here from one of our longtime Rumors versus Facts viewers. And Joshua Hammonds. Joshua Hammonds has been on our show a long time. It says, numerous people in the industry have compared Jared Curtis to Matthews, Stafford type arm talent, big shoes to be compared to. What are Jet's thoughts on a solid comparison? I kind of want to bring it up. I know we're talking about these other teams and, the future of these teams, the future of Georgia. I'm like, if I've got the quarterback room that I have right now, I'm going to let Gunnar Stockton run all over the place because I got Ryan Puglisi backing him up, and Ryan looked good. And if Ryan comes in, great. I've got an absolute, slinger back there. He's going to sling this thing all over the place. And then next year, and Ryan Montgomery behind him looks really good, had 2 great scrimmages. Then they got Jared Curtis coming in, and Jared Curtis on Friday night. Holy crap. Tell us about it.
Yeah, had an all-time performance against a team that I think was in the division above his school in Nashville Christian. Had Charles
they won 11-1 last year.
On 3, director of scouting Charles Power was there. He's posting videos of him hurdling people and running over people, and do a touchdown to tie it with like 4 seconds left, and just I wasn't even there, and I was like, this is one of the greatest games I've ever seen, and I'm watching it through Twitter highlights. So
yeah.
I think let's get one thing out of the way. I suck at comparisons for starters, but the arm talent's ridiculous. Like, you watch some of these clips and it looks like it's in fast forward because it's just an absolute laser beam. Someone on the board mentioned the other day, like Josh Allen, and I think in high school he plays that way. The question is, like, the competition he plays in high school on a general it is not that great from what I understand. It is someone, again, I don't live in Tennessee, so I understand it to be the competition isn't that great. So I think he's going to be, again, like Gunnar Stockton, like even Stetson Bennett, he's going to be a guy that can keep defenses honest, that can scramble. He's going to have to learn to slide, or he's going to get his block knocked off, which you don't want, but definitely just a phenomenal athlete that I think if you look at the arm talent, he's got Gunnar's running ability, mobility with a lot better arm talent. I think is kind of what I've seen so far. I mean, again, it is absolute freaking rockets when this kid throws the ball. And like you mentioned with Gunnar earlier, I don't think any of his receivers are going. They got a running back that's got a few offers, but I don't think any of his receivers are going D1 as far as I know. So, yeah, it's the tools are there. He's going to need time to adjust to college football, the speed of the SEC, like anybody else. But it's hard not to. It's easy to look at it and be like, yeah, this kid that has a high ceiling for sure.
Ooh, yeah, shout out to Thomas County Central. I see you, D. Brown. TCC, baby. They're the best. It was 2 years ago, I went from Augusta to Nashville to watch him throw in the Under Armour thing. And Jamarcus Russell was there working the quarterbacks. And I started texting my guys here and some people that I know around the program. I'm like, it's Jared Curtis kid. This ball whistles in the air. Sounds like it's coming out of a jugs machine. It just makes a sound in the air. It's different than when everybody else throws it. And Jamarcus Russell lost his damn mind. He's like, who are you? What's your name? Rocket? They call you Rocket at your school? He made up a nickname for him there. And I remember Jamarcus, I know he was kind of an NFL bust, but he was a number 1 pick. He's a big dude, strong.
And a guy that what's the number 1 quality you think of when you think of Jamarcus Russell. The dude had a cannon for an arm. So
I mean, it throws it 80 yards. When he is impressed by you, as he's like, "What year are you?" You know, he couldn't believe his eyes. Neither could I. And again, this is I mentioned I've been doing this since '93, 32 years. That day I started making the comparison 2 years ago. I'm like, this kid, the last arm I saw like this was on Matt Stafford. And just, are they the same guy? I don't know, but I can tell you, does he? I don't know if he knows where to throw it. I don't know if he knows how to read defenses. I don't know if he knows what to do. But wherever he throws that ball, somebody's hands are gonna sting. So, and if you get a pick six on him, you will be shaking your hands out on your way to the end zone because this damn thing's gonna hurt. So, anyway, to me, the future looks very bright for the Georgia Bulldogs. Not only with the team they have right now, but the team that they will have. They do have the number 2 recruiting class. People are talking about maybe they'll have the number 1 class. Kirby Smart in the NIL era, in the portal era, we've seen things kind of bouncing up and down, but his number 1 skill is getting the best talent on a roster. And we've seen, even though he has a very young roster, what we saw Saturday was those roster pieces coming on and having a big day. And I think we'll see the same thing this coming Saturday. And then in December, they'll sign another class, and he'll have it. You know, he'll lose a lot of pieces. There'll be a lot of kids transfer. A lot of kids are being played over. A lot of kids have been recruited over. You know, if you got Juan Gaston and J.J. Haney and Elijah Griffin playing in the trenches in game 1, somebody's going to transfer. But the guys that are transferring, you're not losing your best players. So I think Kirby Smart is going to have his rosters are just going to continue to be at the top, and should be a really fun season. Any other thing you want to touch on? Because we've been going kind of about an hour here. So,
is there anything left to touch on?
No,
I mean, again, I think I wrote this in a column a couple of weeks ago. I think this team has a lot of potential to get better as the year goes along. Like, I think the offensive line will get better, defensive line will get better. Secondary will get better once they kind of settle on what safeties and stars look like, and Dalen Everett gets back. Gunner's going to get better the more reps you get. So I think this is a team that is set up. And again, you got to stay healthy and you got to actually progress and whatever. But this is a team I think that's set up well to get better and better as the season goes along. So, you know, next step is Saturday against Austin Peay, and then SEC play starts and we go from there. But I think this is a team that's going to keep getting better as the year goes along. And, you know, if you're Kirby Smart, you're hoping you're playing your best football come. I mean, if anything, last year, like, Georgia got worse as the season.
Yeah.
I mean, the last, like, yeah, they won the Georgia Tech.
We had more and more injuries as they went.
That's also, and again, injuries is a big part of this. But I mean, you look at the last month of the year last year, like, you kind of mucked your way through the Florida game. You got smoked against Ole Miss. Tennessee was a great win, for sure. You don't play well against UMass. Yeah, you win the Georgia Tech game, but the defense gave up 700 rushing yards. So
eight overtimes.
Yeah. So I think this is a team that is going to be getting better as the year goes along, as opposed to stagnating and maybe, again, depending on injuries, you actually got to get better. All those caveats apply.
Yeah.
But that's what I think.
Hey, not bad for a team that lost double-digit guys to the NFL.
Exactly.
Not bad. All right, folks, that's all the time we have for tonight. We appreciate you joining us. Normally, we'll be doing this show Mondays at 7, but with it being Labor Day, we knew we'd miss a lot of people, so we moved it to Tuesday at 7. But join us next Monday, 7 o'clock. We will have the same Rumors versus Facts show. We'll be talking Austin Peay, looking ahead to Tennessee, and we want you to be there. Also, if you would do me a personal favor, if you hit subscribe on this channel, it would mean a lot to me. It doesn't cost you anything, but it helps us with our numbers, and we'd greatly appreciate it. Even Jed would appreciate it, and Jed doesn't like anything. So,
or get paid.
Yeah, well, that's true. Yeah.
So
We don't need him to get paid. All right, folks. See you later.